So the Chiefs have some problems they have to figure out ASAP. There's blame to go around, but it's safe to say Chiefs fans are not happy after this one. Some of these problems can probably be fixed in-house, but others, they should seriously consider looking elsewhere for some big areas of concern. Well, I'll break down all that and more as I look at the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Chiefs' loss to the Eagles. But first, how about those? All right, so the Week 2 Super Bowl rematch at Arrowhead Stadium resulted in the Chiefs losing a 3-point game to the Philadelphia Eagles, 17-20, and this was, surprisingly to many, as well as myself, a defensive slugfest more than anything else. I felt like the Eagles would show more than they did offensively against KC than they did the Cowboys because that was a weird divisional game. Part of that is because they have an incredible O-line with Saquon Barkley behind them, along with the top wide receiver duo in the league with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. It was also because of how the Chiefs' defense looked against the Chargers a week prior. However, I thought the Chiefs' defense held their own in this game. I thought the Chiefs once again did a great job of limiting the run, so that wasn't surprising as I figured they would sell out to stop Saquon, but I did think A.J. Brown would do more damage as well as Devontae Smith, who did have that 28-yarder near the end of the game, but the Chiefs' defense played pretty freaking well, all things considered. They held Hurts to just 15 of 22 for 101 yards and 0 passing touchdowns, and were able to keep Saquon to just 4 yards a carry with a long of 13. Now, Hurts did get in on the ground with a tush push, and then the 13-yard run that Saquon Barkley had resulted in a poorly executed by the Chiefs defense walk-in touchdown for him. It was unfortunate, but I place the least amount of blame overall on the defense in this game. Sure, I think Trent McDuffie maybe could have had better coverage on Devontae Smith on that 3rd and 10 that went for 28 yards and ultimately an Eagles touchdown to make it a 10-point game midway through the 4th quarter, but it's a tough ask for any cornerback to adjust in real time to an underthrown ball like that. I ultimately give credit to Devontae Smith for just making a hell of a play there. It's kind of crazy because I think if you went into this game and told me, hey Cole, Jalen Hurts is only throwing for 101 yards in this game. The Eagles offense is going to be held to just 5 of 14 on 3rd downs, and Saquon will only have 88 rushing yards for 1 touchdown. I would say, okay, that's probably a Chiefs W, I think. Well, against a team as good as the Eagles, you have to execute better on offense and special teams than the Chiefs did in order to walk away with the victory, and they did not do that. I'll get to all that, trust me, but I thought cornerback Noel Williams had a pretty good showing with a very small sample size on defense. He got away with a hit on the sideline a bit early on A.J. Brown, I believe, after being beaten coverage, but he also had an incredible PBU on 3rd and 8 on Devontae Smith. Basically, textbook perfect pass breakup there and a good step forward for the rookie. Another rookie in Omar Norman-Lott made his NFL debut and got his first ever NFL sack, and it really looked like Goldberg at WrestleMania, and I'm not exaggerating one bit. Ashton Gelati also got some snaps in, but for all the young guys that I just mentioned, I would like to see more moving forward, especially if you have Mike Dana and Christian Fulton out for any real length of time here. They both left early on in the game, being ruled out really before halftime, I believe, and Mike Dana suffered a quad injury. Christian Fulton is now dealing with an ankle injury after playing just 2 defensive snaps. Andy Reid wouldn't elaborate on the injuries today during his presser. He basically said, hey, the guys aren't here yet, so I don't have any injury updates for you. He does that every week, but hopefully those injuries are more minor, please. Aside from the injuries, if you want some concerns for the defense, I'll give you one for me. It's going to be the pass rush and their inability to get pressure when only rushing 4. Karl Loftus led the day with 3 pressures, but only had a 7.7 win percentage. Meanwhile, he was actually the only defensive lineman to generate more than 1 pressure. So yeah, Spags blitzed left and right because of that, and this was actually the highest blitz rate we've ever seen Spags have since he became the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs in 2019. He blitzed Jalen Hurts on 16 of his 25 dropbacks, 64%. That is an eyebrow-raising number, and again, has me concerned about the Chiefs' defensive line. I mean, maybe it was as simple as Mike Dana was out. He knew how good the Eagles' O-line is, and so he was like, yeah, the only way to get pressure on Hurts is to blitz the hell out of him. So if Veach makes a move here, I hope it's either for another pass rusher or a running back or maybe both. But we'll get to that here shortly. I just thought the defense played really well and looked way better, more in sync, cohesive, aggressive, etc. compared to week 1. Chamari Connor had a pretty solid bounce-back game aside from a missed tackle early on Saquon. Jalen Watson, Brian Cook, really a lot of guys in the secondary fought hard out there, and I don't have a lot of complaints on the defensive side of the ball. The offense fought hard as well, don't get me wrong, and at times were able to find some success. I always thought it was going to be an uphill battle on that side, with Mahomes needing to play perfect, and they had to win the turnover battle in order to win this game. Well, sadly, that didn't happen, and that's why I got to talk about some of the biggest concerns I have on this team through 2 weeks of the regular season. But first, I got to shout out the delicious sponsor of today's video, Good Chop, who delivers high-quality American meat and seafood straight to your door. This helps you remove the guesswork of hitting or missing out on certain cuts at the grocery store by delivering vacuum-sealed cuts frozen at peak freshness so your freezer stays stocked. From there, you can cook what you want, when you want. My entire family has enjoyed Good Chop for over a year and a half now, and it helps that there's more than 100 menu items to choose from. UDSA choice and prime steaks, 100% grass-fed beef, wild-caught seafood, and so much more. This go-round, the ribeye steaks were perfect on the grill for dinner per usual. The sockeye salmon was a family favorite, for my daughters especially, as well as the thick-cut bacon they can't get enough. And then, the ground beef helped make some fantastic nachos. Honestly, it was all good, which has been our experience with Good Chop from the very beginning. It also helps knowing that Good Chop sources only the good stuff, which is why they feel confident about their 100% money-back guarantee. Love Good Chop or get your money back. So to support local family farms and independent ranchers in the US as well as my channel, go to goodchop.com/YouTube and use code HBTC50 or click the link in the description down below to get $50 off plus free shipping on your first box. Again, that's goodchop.com/YouTube and use code HBTC50 to get $50 off plus free shipping on your first box. All right, let's talk about the offense here. It was always going to be a tough go with no Rice, no Worthy, and no run game. We all knew that. In spite of that, though, the Chiefs could have won this game or at least had a chance to do so if they executed on a few more plays than they did. Sure, it still would have been an ugly game that you had to grind out to the end, but a win against the defending Super Bowl champs that have a more talented roster in most categories would have been pretty good to me. Instead, Mahomes once again, early on, when Philly played more man coverage, put on his cape and led the room in rushing for the second week in a row by double the yards. He had an impressive touchdown run in this one as well, and on multiple plays rushed for key first downs and even lowered his shoulder once again to fight for more yards. And get this, Patrick is actually the first quarterback since 1950, outside of Cam Newton in 2020, to do that. Rush for double the yards of anyone else on his team in the first 2 weeks of the season. Mahomes is averaging 60 yards a game and a rushing touchdown. Meanwhile, Kareem Hunt and Pacheco are averaging 23 yards, roughly. Pacheco is currently at a 3.1 yard per carry average, and while the offensive line hasn't been perfect in their run blocking, they are graded out 28th out of 32 teams per PFF. It's not great here, and Mahomes is having to do too much, at least on the ground, and it's really not sustainable long term. The run game is stale, the coaches can call better plays, and overall, the room lacks explosiveness. And when you are down your two top receivers, that shows up even more in the running back room when you don't have other guys that can make plays happen. So yeah, I think Veach fell short this offseason in adding a playmaker in the backfield, and would love it if he would make a move for somebody. But I also acknowledge the Eagles played great in the trenches, and that O-line could also be better for the Kansas City Chiefs. I just gotta say so. I've seen some comments telling me that it wouldn't matter who's in the backfield because the Chiefs O-line can't block at all. Even if the Chiefs had, let's say, one of the top running backs in the league, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, the list goes on. I'm just going to have to respectfully disagree with you. Pacheco and Kareem probably wouldn't be a starter on at least half the teams in the NFL. And I'm not saying they need to get Saquon and pay a running back an ungodly amount of money or anything like that, but I do think they needed to invest more into that room than they have. And it really shows. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a running back on TV from another team that had basically nowhere to go, and they magically made a man miss and go for an additional 15, 20, 25, 30 yards over expected. This is noticeable even in the pass game for the Chiefs running back. On this 3rd and 7 here, Mahomes threw a little check down, a short pass to Kareem Hunt that went for just 3 yards. You make a man miss there, and that's the first and much more. There is just no juice. Was that a perfect pass from Mahomes there? I don't know, maybe not, but Kareem Hunt just doesn't have that explosiveness. So that might be the biggest issue right now to me. I'm just not sure there's a fix coming or not. I hope VIDS brings somebody in, but I think you have to deal with it and just play cleaner football until Rice and Worthy are back in action. Worthy is potentially going to be able to play this upcoming week against the New York Giants, so we'll have to keep an eye on that for sure and see how he trends on the injury report. There's more concerns, though, for sure on this roster than just the running back room. Mahomes missed several throws that he could have, should have made, and he said it himself in his post-game presser. He's got to be better when plays and opportunities present themselves. There was one to Noah Gray early on that he overthrew. Then late in the game to Tyquan Thornton, he missed him wide open. Literally as wide open as you could possibly be, overthrew him badly. That would have been a walk-in touchdown. You've got to hit that, and had he done so, Thornton scores with roughly 4 minutes left in the game rather than a minute later. Thornton was a bright spot and showed an ability to win, and I think Mahomes should consider being more aggressive downfield at times, because what do you really have to lose? You're going to throw 3 passes for 3 yards apiece, 4th and 1, not be able to convert it or go for a punt, or try a 50-yard bomb. I'm not saying do it all the time, but be a little bit more aggressive here based on the lack of star power you have on this roster with some of your key wide receivers out. And I know people are concerned about Patrick Mahomes' deep ball, but he's just got to keep slinging them. He found Thornton for 49 yards late in the game, a few plays after that wide open miss that he had. So do that earlier. Please, I beg of you, be more aggressive. Now, this is a bit of a switch of gears, but it's still on the subject of Mahomes having misses. On one of these plays here, he got sacked. I'm not sure where he was looking in the read progression, but Juju was in theory open in the middle of the field for a potential first down. All that to say, we all know that Mahomes could have played better. He said it himself, and make the most of a few more opportunities. That game is probably a W, but we also know he's not the biggest problem out there on offense. It's tough sledding in the wide receiver room, and some of this has to be on the coaching staff and their inability to help in the play calling aspect of getting some of these guys open given the room's limitations. There are a bunch of times nobody was open, and combine that with, again, a lackluster running back room and Mahomes missing a few key passes when things were open, and the offense looked eerily similar to 2024 after losing Rashee Rice to injury. So there's blame on the running back room, or the lack thereof, then on coaching. Andy Reid, for whatever reason, deciding to be aggressive on that 4th down deep in their own territory. It was like the 35, 37-yard line and resulted in a turnover on downs. The defense made a great stand, but it was an easy 3 points for the Eagles, given up by the coaching staff. That was a wild play call to me because the Chiefs defense was playing lights out. I could maybe understand if the Eagles were doing whatever they wanted, marching downfield time and time again and scoring touchdown after touchdown, but that wasn't the case at all. Speaking of field goals, before I get to a couple more concerns, I do think Harrison Butker's got to be a bit more consistent than he has the past 2 games. Small sample size, yes, and a 58-yard field goal is no chip shot, okay? We all know that, but that's well within his range and was one of the worst misses I've seen from him in a long time. Then last week, he missed the extra point after the touchdown. Less excusable in my eyes than the 58-yarder, but against great teams, you can't miss kicks like that, and he's the highest paid kicker in the NFL for a reason. The expectation is you got to make those. So I don't want to come down too hard on Butker per se, but with the coaching staff giving up 3 points due to poor decision making there, going forward on 4th down deep in their own territory, and then Butker missing 3, that's 6 points, when in the end, the Eagles only won by 3. Now, the biggest swing of the entire game was when the Chiefs were trailing 10-13 and finally found some life on their longest drive of the day. Prior to that, though, they'd really struggled to find life, and Travis Kelce was one of the few bright spots, catching 4 passes for 61 yards. However, on a gotta-have-it play in the red zone, on a 14-play drive that took 8 minutes off the clock, Mahomes tried to hit Kelce for what would have been a touchdown that would have brought KC up by 4, 17-13. But instead, it seemed like Kelce wasn't quite ready for the ball and kind of batted it up into the air, with Makuba picking it off and taking it up the sideline 41 yards. This ultimately resulted in a touchdown to bring Philly up 10-20. So in the span of a few minutes, it went from KC being up by 4, or potentially being up by 4 if Kelce would have caught that pass, to trailing by 10 just like that. It wasn't the only reason why they lost, but it was one of the biggest mistakes of the entire day from a guy that you really expect to make those plays in Travis Kelce. And I will say, hats off to the Eagles for getting the win because they ended up making just enough plays to get it done and have now beat the Chiefs, I think, for the third time in a row. Meanwhile, the Chiefs fall to 0-2 for the first time in the Mahomes era, something that hasn't happened to the Chiefs since 2014. It is unfamiliar territory, and only 12.2% of teams that have started 0-2 since 1990 have made the playoffs. Still, I'm not overly concerned at this point in time. The Ravens and Broncos both started out 0-2 last year and both made the playoffs, and I still think the Chiefs are gonna make it. But the kicker for me is this game was winnable for the Chiefs, and they just made crucial mistakes in key situations when they normally don't. That's how they've been able to squeak out all these one-score wins over the past year or so. You execute on key third and fourth downs late in these games, and they haven't been doing that the last couple of weeks. There is some positives on the horizon. Worthy should return soon, as will Rice. And a big bright spot, if we want to look at one on the offense, is left tackle Josh Simmons. His future is bright and makes me excited for the blind side of Patrick Mahomes for years to come. Now, look at this. Josh Simmons is actually the third best pass blocking offensive tackle through 2 weeks of football, and I'm going to take that bright spot all day long. Then from here, I just need the leaders of this team to step up. Andy Reid with the play calling, got to be better. He says he takes full accountability. Well, do a little bit better here and let's be more effective. Then Chris Jones, he lost contain week 1, had a couple of penalties early on yesterday, and could be heard talking trash to Jalen Hurts at the end of the game when the Eagles were in victory formation, saying something like they didn't even get 100 yards. Come on, dude. Don't talk like that when you're taking an L. Just be humble and take the loss. Butker then missed points in back-to-back games. Kelce's been off with Mahomes. He had a misconnect in the red zone last week. Maybe that was a little bit on both of them, but then he had the tipped-up pass turned INT yesterday, and then Mahomes missed several key throws as well. It's all correctable, but the margin of error is very thin, and the schedule stays brutal for weeks to come. You got the Giants next up. Hopefully should be a win, I think. But then it's the Ravens, you got the Jags, you got the Lions before Rice can even return to play. They've got to get things corrected here ASAP and just hang on until then. And now that they started the season 0-2, each one of these games becomes that much more important. And then I guess I will talk briefly here about the Tush Push since it was a topic of hot debate all over social media yesterday. The Eagles ran 7 of them, and the refs probably could have flagged at least a couple that I saw for a false start. It's not why the Chiefs lost, but there was such an outcry about this from fans really all across the league that I think the NFL might crack down on it a bit more harshly moving forward. Maybe it gets banned next year, but who really knows? It's a tough play to defend, and really only the Eagles have found such a high success rate doing it. I think if they just flag it properly, if either team moves before the snap, all that good stuff, it's fine by me. I don't really care. And I talked about it last because I really feel like it played a small role, a very small role in the list of concerns that I have for this team. And I'm not really a guy to cry about the officiating when the Chiefs lose a game and they had so many other chances to win and really shot themselves in the foot on multiple plays. Anyway, with all that being said, let me know your thoughts on this game along with your biggest concerns. Who were your standout players? Who concerned you the most? And where do you place blame on this loss? Give me like a 3 to 4 point list in the comments down below from greatest concern to maybe least concerning, but still a concern. Let me know in the comments. I'll read through them and process through it together. And until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?